The score to the movie Joker has well deserved, won the Oscars. Hildur Guðnadóttir has created a masterpiece, and I got really inspired and I thought I'd create a track in a similar style. The only limitations I've set myself were to use two of our sample libraries, Stratus and BBC Symphony Orchestra. In this video, I'm gonna not only showcase those two libraries, but I'm gonna look at my compositional approach, orchestration and production, including mix and master. So before we get started, let's look at some facts or some information about this film. So I made some notes here. What are the characteristics of the score for the Joker? So it's dark, it's heavy. Apparently the director Todd Phillips has asked Hildur Guðnadóttir to create something dark and heavy even before they started shooting, so in the script stage. The music is melancholic, it's open-hearted, it's very character-driven, so it's all about kind of Arthur and his inner world and his inner conflict, so it's very thematic. It's kind of multi-dimensional, so like Arthur's character. It's very profound and it has developing themes and sounds. So the orchestra is getting gradually bigger as the soundtrack goes on. If we listen to the first track, Hoyt's Office, you hear an orchestra, but it's very, very quiet in the background. It's kind of almost whispering, and apparently that's kind of one of her techniques to kind of develop or kind of coloring in the development of Arthur's character. So what would that mean translating this into music? So simplicity in orchestration. If we look at different orchestration techniques, we have unison textures, which, for example, in this case, we're going to use, because I'm going to use the whole orchestra. I'm going to use woodwinds and brass as well. So woodwind runs, etc. like that wouldn't be very suitable. Lots of counterpoint melodies either, or complex upfront textures aren't really suitable for that kind of style of writing. I'm going to look at extended techniques. So if we listen to the score, this whispering sound. So she was describing that the silence in the room was contributing to the energy of the recording. So something that I found very, very interesting. The production is going to be very important. Sound and texture is definitely here in focus rather than, let's call it, complicated or technical writing. Reverbs, I'm going to play with different kind of reverbs. I'm going to show you how I do that, how I route that, what kind of reverbs I'm using, etc. So with this in mind, I would then go and set up my template, choose my sounds. Let's focus first on the sounds. So Stratus is this really wonderful library that is basically self-playing pianos that you trigger while playing chords. And then it's not only good at kind of system music and beautiful kind of stuff, it's also really fantastic for this kind of super dark stuff. So I'm just going to play this sound here. Listen to these warps, because Oliver is a wonderful soundsmith himself. So this is a collaboration with Oliver Arnolds, and the sounds are just so nicely produced. Even just this sound, I chose this one to come in at the intro. It's kind of gives you this disturbing feeling, and it's perfect for a thriller setting. Another one that I'm using is this thing called Drifting Waves. Fading Lights, for example. I'm using this as more of a melody. I'm going to close this here. Now we've got our head set right for this kind of composition. Wow, just wonderful. Falling Apart. So this is what I would do. So I would exactly go into the library and load literally each of the sounds, and then by that creating my sound palette. So that's what you would do as well if you score a film, and if you create your kind of color palette like a painter who creates his own mixtures, etc. What's in Hildur's score is that she is using a haldorophone. So I'm not sure whether I pronounced this right, but it's an electroacoustic cello. And especially in one of the scenes, the bathroom dance, which I'll talk about in a second, is a very prominent instrument. So I haven't got a solo instrument here. I want to do this in an orchestral kind of context. But anyway, creating the sound palette is very, very important. And because I wanted to showcase Stratus, I was choosing kind of the most suitable warps here. So healing pads, my next one. So as you can see, it's all going into a similar direction. Then I found this really cool bass, Mondo bass, and I'm going to take my effects off here. I'll show you later. And this one is super low. It's kind of a subby vibe there. Pulse wave, I'm using a little bit as well. Cool, and then that would be my, let's say, soundscapey stuff. The pianos, I'm actually doing that in this kind of sense as well. So I'm using them as soundscape kind of decorations. Check out on the website how this all works. I'm just going to play this for you. So already now, this can be used in a very kind of beautiful context, but now I already played some darker sounds and we have our heads set in that kind of realm. These twinkly piano sounds can bring you in this kind of psycho thriller kind of world, in my opinion anyways. So there's, for example, swarms as well that I love using. Rhythmical attack, really cool for changes. I'll show you later on as well. So as you can hear, it hits some notes harder and then you hear the twinkling kind of fading away slowly. And then we have these synth rhythms here as well. To indicate a sense of urge and tempo. Synth swarms, these are just absolutely lovely. Wow, listen to this. Fantastic. Of course, you can change your release, attack, etc. and apply other quick effects. Then we have normal piano in there. So basically the center piano, which is the main piano that then triggers the self-playing pianos left and right. And it sounds rather lovely as well. Then I've set up my BBC Symphony Orchestra template. So I have my woodwinds up here, I have my brass, then percussion, and the strings down here. So I want to create a realistic sound with my orchestra and then mix it up with Stratus and make it a hybrid score in that sense. So let's look at the characteristics again of Hildur's score. So we were saying dark, heavy, melancholic, open-hearted, character-driven, and developing themes. And that brings me to the bathroom dance. So apparently she was sending this before they even started shooting, and the scene was meant to go differently, but the director played this to Joaquin Phoenix, and he improvised this dance, this metamorphosis into the Joker to Hildur's lovely bathroom dance theme. And that was, it was the first thing she sent, and it goes something like that. And it's just, this theme develops throughout the whole film. So I'm playing this obviously in my own kind of version on the piano because it's played on the cello. But this is basically the theme, and it's just so lovely. And it's these two notes on the cello mainly. And it really gives you the chills when you watch that scene and hear that music that really marries perfectly. And is a wonderful piece of art. Okay, so enough talking. I'm going to play you some of my sections. What I've done is I've taken a little bit similar chord progressions, similar kind of approach with the 1 or 2 note theme. So I've transposed the whole thing up. I'm in E flat minor. And I'm using not a solo cello, but the section sound cello. I stuck to the cello because the cello has just such a warm and heavy kind of sound, which was requested, let's say, by our director that we need to create this track for. So let's have a listen to the intro. All right. So, as I was saying, the sound world is created by Stratus. I'm not going to play this again because this was pretty much just Stratus. And then the extended techniques I was talking about was these tremolos sul pont. So it's when the player moves the bow really fast, but behind the bridge on the string instrument, it creates this kind of raspy sound, this smoky tone. Which fits really perfectly with the kind of dark, heavy feeling. Then let's look at the cello, which is playing my main line. Let me just show you my routing here. For the cello, I have my bus number 1 going to the hall. So I'm using this reverb here. Pro R. OPW Fab Verb is just I created my own preset, so it's a little bit longer than I'm using usually the Vienna Hall, which is I think 2.8 seconds or something like that. So I'm sending quite a bit through there directly. Then number 2 is going to a cello room. So here cello chamber, Abbey Road plugins from Waves. So it has its own kind of sound there, and the cello chamber it has kind of a bathroomy sound, and I thought not because it's called bathroom dance, but it kind of makes it a little bit dark and uneasy. So I'm sending some signal through there. And then bus number 3 goes to a plate that I'm using for most other strings as well. So that's my second main reverb. Here I have a preset, lush strings. I went through a few, just listening out what sounds good. And then number 4, I'm sending it to my Echo Boy. So there's actually quite a lot of delay on the cello, which kind of makes the sound very long. And it also like helps with the fade out of the strings. But it's a little bit more of a creative choice here because you can actually hear the echo. And I've chosen a ping pong delay. So it goes right, left, which you can select here. And important, you put reverb on your delay as well. Otherwise the delay will be the dry sound, if that makes sense. So I have my Echo Boy here going to 1, 2, and 3. I have a saturation on there. Here is also Abbey Road saturator. It makes the sound slightly distorted and a bit thicker. Let's have a listen. Without. It's just very, very gentle. It adds a touch of saturation and it brings out the fatness a little bit of the cello. So one of the key aspects in mixing when you do things many times, if you especially have many tracks, subtle changes will then make up the whole mix rather than going all the way extreme. Then, as for my orchestra, Hildur was saying that she's using this almost like silence, like kind of sound. And for that, I would like to use the sul tasto sounds here on cello. At least I'm trying to put in basically her whole score in one track. So I'm starting very small and whispery and then get bigger and then later on use legato. So here I'm using the sul tasto first. Turn up the reverb, the internal one. And by the way, I'm mainly using the mix one here. So Jake Jackson's mix, because he is just amazing and I absolutely trust what he does mixing wise. So what better option can you have? Of course, close, tree, out and ambient is nice choices to have. But for the moment, I'm sticking to mainly this one. Again, here, reverb send. And let's just have a quick listen to only the strings. Oh, I'm cheating a little bit here because as I was reading interviews of Hildur, she was saying close to whispering, and instantly I had to think about our sample library Albion 5 on the edge of silence. So this is called Legno Tratto, where the player plays with the back of the bow, and I just cheated a little bit and put that in right in the back of this intro section because, listen to this. If this isn't the perfect whispery sound, but again, I've mixed it in really quietly, not that anyone says, well, I didn't stick to my limitations of Stratus and BBC. So let me solo this so you can hear what's going on in the strings. And here I've marked my chords. So again, very simple chord changes, very slow as well, and nothing really counterpoint or anything for the moment. Just let that melody shine. So again there, extended technique, trem, sul pont, just to bring in a little bit of a different color. And for me, this is just such a lovely sound, and it takes you into this special world. I want to show you what I've done with the horn section here. The horn section for me, it's just accentuating little bits and bobs here and there. So I have all on the low section, so tuba, double bass, bass trombones, and here also in the low brass, I have just these like bop, bop, this kind of pulse, but very low in the mix and very on the low ends as well. It just really subtly helps these transitions there. My woodwind section, again, it's just harmonizing a little bit that main melody. Now you will hear it. Basically, I'm harmonizing it with a minor seconds there. So I'm not sure whether you can see here. So I have my E flat to F is basically my main melody. And here I'm creating the harmony by using the G flat going to A flat. And I'm just giving these these voices, I'm playing them in different instruments and sounds. So I create these different colors and timbres. And sometimes what I'm trying to learn myself is that not always each instrument needs to have their own parts, or it all needs to be complicated. It's about creating colors. And so, for example, I have the piccolo right on top, sticking out, carrying that melody really through this whole whispery sounds and this big wall of sound. So if we listen to this again, just the whole orchestra here. Oh, and then here, the percussion. The percussion, very simple, just creating like these pulses. And I was also reading that Hildur, she was like, I would have loved to write some cool beats, but what was really suitable, the beat is almost like the heartbeats of Arthur, and it gradually gets wilder as well, and kind of more regular and heavier as well throughout her score, which I found a very interesting, simple but very interesting trick. So there we go, not really changing anything or adding any counter rhythms. Let's have a quick listen what's going on up here in my soundscape section with Stratus. So very, very subtle, but for me it adds this specific thing that you might not be able to do with an orchestra just itself. It adds this 3D ness to it, I guess. And I just wanted to show you here, for these looped rhythms, I used quite heavy compression. So some of the notes of these sprinkly notes are very quiet, which is beautiful that they are like kind of waves or little drops. So some of them splash a bit more, some of a little less. But I thought to cut through the whole orchestral setup, I want this to stick out a bit more. So I squashed it and lift it up by quite a bit, 6 dB. I have another one here where I kind of did the whole thing more extreme because the section is bigger in the orchestra here, so I needed more to cut through. So these my compression tricks here and there. And then I have this very soft sound bed here created by the sounds I've showed you in the beginning. And then here I'm doing this trick by just raising the pitch, but it's very much in the background. So let's have a listen. So if you have a pitch bend, I have this here. So then you can just do it like that, wheel it in basically, or you can just program it here, channel 1 pitch bends, and use it like that, or AU pitch you can use, or any kind of pitch correction plugin or something like that. And just behind everything in the mix, this will just give you a sense of like, oh, what's happening, until we get into the next part. So I was talking about percussion, so I'm using BBC Symphony Orchestra as well. So here, untuned percussion, this tenor drum, I'm using this. So alternating boom, clack, and then eventually they're playing together to have more of an impact. I'm using timpani as well. So actually, let me just play this together. So quickly first, bass drum 2 and bass drum 1. It's quite a nice sound there. I'll show you later what I've done here and how I've mixed this, what plugins I've used. But for now, I just want to play you this section. Actually, I'm using this small hole Lexicon 224, just a short reverb here on all the percussion stuff. Again, to just summarize all the sounds and make them sounds they're in one room. Yes, I'm taking it out of context, I guess, for that, but because it's the same libraries, it was recorded in the same room anyway. It's just to give it more depth. Let's have the woodwinds in as well. So we have basically 3 parts. So we have these stomps, which is basically percussion and all the low elements. Then we have these kind of swells with the horns, the cor and bass clarinet, oboe as well, actually. Let's just have these in and then see whether we can just listen to that. And then the third element is basically the melody, which we have here. So, well, the oboe, I guess the oboe and the cor anglais and the bass clarinet, they do something like they join the melody and then the swell of the horn. So they're basically halved in the section there, if that makes sense. There we go. And well, I guess there's the fourth element, which is all the ambient stuff. And in this first part here, I would say these strings, sul tasto strings and trem sul pont here belong almost to this one. So I hope this makes sense if I show this to you like this, because this is what's going on in my head when I orchestrate things. So the strings and these warped sounds and the pianos as well, they build the sound beds for these stomps, swells and melodies we just saw there. But everything in its essence quite simple, I believe. So I'm hoping to create this wall of sound that doesn't sound complicated yet very three-dimensional. So the next part is very much pad-like again. So I'm using sul tasto, flautando, sul pont, bass sul pont as well, which is it's such an epic sound. I'm taking out everything below 20, usually on the low sounds, so it doesn't get cluttered there, and you can't hear that anyway, and you don't want that to trigger any compressors or anything. Very dark sounds, and I would say that's an extended technique there as well. I hear my bass. So there I'm bringing in a stronger sound, so I'm changing to legato here. If we just solo these, first violin comes in later. I'm having trem consort here in the first violin to create tension. Viola, legato and trem, so I imagine they would play divisi. Same actually with the second violin, that they have more parts now. And the legato cello keeps being in there. Bass legato and then sul ponzo. So let's have a listen to the string section. So there I'm going E flat F on the low end, and the chords are more, I'm doing like this because I'm a piano player, on the right hand basically on the upper register, and then it changes. So on the very low end I'm doing the chords and the melody moves up. So fairly simple orchestration there, focusing on the melody and just these chords building up. No counter melody as of yet. Let's have a listen how it sounds with the brass. And then there you can see that I'm bringing in just a little bit of movement. Okay, what's going on? So the horns and the tenor trombones are starting a counter melody and then going into the chords, and here the bass trombones and the tuba are accentuating here that A flat minor, just doubling up with the bass here. And then while we're at it, the contra bassoon legato is also playing these low notes, and so are the bassoons. Let's just have a listen. Well, you just got to listen to this in solo, this contra bassoon legato here. Super cool. And very important, you have to imagine you need quite a lot of air to play that instrument. So you want to leave a little bit of a gap to breathe, and this helps your realism. So phrasing and breathing is very important, especially instruments that you have to use your breath. That's these low parts. And again, it's just very simple, and it's just everything together makes up this epic sound. So there's no need of like stacking loads of basses or loads of different kind of things to make it sound big. It's just the orchestration and concentrating on creating these different timbres and sounds. So we were at the horn section. If you're interested, I'm just going to play this horn section solo. So again, this one is a counter melody here. This one is my main melody, and then this one is accompaniment. So here, these ones are actually following what the high strings are doing. So I'm interlinking those parts, or like I'm giving parts around. So again, main melody comes in, and then they're part of the counter melody, and then they're part of the accompaniment. And I believe that's how you create interest, even though in a slow kind of orchestration or in a slow piece. So you don't move, you don't just have horns, 3-part horn as if you were playing chords on the left hand and then melody on top. So I hope I'm making sense and I'm conveying well enough what I would like to say. So similar thing with the woodwinds. Let's have a quick listen. Now the horns and the woods together, so you can see how they interact. The percussion is nothing special. It's almost the same parts as in the first section. Let's have a quick listen. So I'm just increasing the velocity. If we just go in here, you can probably see that. Yeah. So general velocity is just going up slightly to increase the intensity. And I'm creating these offbeats kind of stick hits here and there just to create interest, and have quite a lot of reverb on them. So it sounds quite far away. And again, it makes the whole piece a lot deeper and 3D. And then my Stratus stuff here, I'm just going to play this for you so you can see what kind of interest I'm adding. For me, the bass is a big one. And then also the rhythm that I've added, actually, I'll just show you here. Play this to you first. The synth rhythm, and I've added a tremolo. And I quite like it because you will see through the orchestral thickness, there is this kind of rhythm popping up because it's going from left to right. So you can pick it up here and there. I had to be quite careful where to put it exactly in the mix because the notes also don't change. So sometimes it bites a little bit, but that's kind of the point of this line. So I have this one as my driving force together with the bass basically, and then these fading lights. Let's see. Adding the piano rhythms. Again, with quite a high compression. These swarms and the hammers that you can hear left and right, they are just absolutely amazing. Cool, let's have a quick listen how this sounds all together. Right, and in the end, I just have this thing called comes and goes. It's really perfect for this kind of outro, and I have it here in the intro as well, so hopefully that will bring the listener back home. Then I have here rhythmic waves, and I've activated, so this is basically my main melody, but it's hidden within these waves. I'm hoping that you can hear it because I'm turning up the piano overlay, which means whenever I play a note, so an actual piano sounds up front or on top of the mix, basically. So it's overlaid over the rhythmic waves, so you can still hear the attack most, and it's quite fun actually to play. So you can hear that I'm playing the chords there because of the piano overlay. Right, that's the whole piece compositionally. What I then do mix-wise is I'm trying to make each instrument sound as good as possible, as idiomatic as possible. So idiomatic means it can do what it can do in real life. So have it in the right range, have it breathing as if it was a real player, have things like that are possible that a player can play. And I literally listen to each individual line, of course, and just make it sound as good and nice as possible and sounding as it should. And so I play with the, let's say here, for example, the piccolo. I first choose my mix here. I think about what kind of role does the piccolo have? Does it need to stick out? Does it need to be a solo instrument, etc.? Or have a solo part? In my case, no. So I'm just sticking to the mix. I'm using a little bit of reverb. I want it to be quite expressive here. So I'm leaving the vibrato all the way up for these lines. And then I'm just listening to it. I'm obviously going in here as well. So I'm programming really carefully. So making these curves here to bring life into the performance. Breathing there, actually I could probably give a little bit more because that's a bit, very little time to breathe there. I put reverb according to the instrument. Individually, I like doing that so I can hear how it sounds instantly. So here I'm using 2 reverbs. For most instruments, I'm using 2 reverbs. So one, my own that I already showed you, and the other one is the plate one, the Abbey Road plates plugin from Waves. In this case, I'm using the large strings. Doesn't matter, I'm sending woods through as well. So I would solo it and see how much I like, which amounts that I find appropriate for the instrument. So make each instrument sound nice and good. So that's my first point when mixing. Then I would go through the sections and balance the instruments with each other. So the BBC Symphony Orchestra is actually really nicely balanced for you when it was recorded, so you don't have to actually do too much, but I play it. And then I visualize it. I like to visualize it a little bit, not that one instrument is really up here and the other one down here, because sometimes a piccolo, you could still hear it when it's down here, and maybe you just have it turned down, but it still plays in its full kind of dynamic range, and then it would sound weird because your ear would know that it's supposed to sound louder, but it sounds much less loud than, let's say, a bassoon that just does like boop, boop in mezzo piano. So basically you gotta listen and know your parts. Like if it plays forte like a piccolo, it's definitely gonna sound above everything else in the woodwinds. If you wanted to kind of sit in and play at a mezzo forte level or mezzo piano, maybe like here, like the others, you will still hear it slightly better because it just has that frequency or quality of tone that cuts through much better. But then you still want to see that it's around, the perceived loudness is around the same as everything else. So you can use these numbers. And then I believe that's going to be quite a good reference for your overall section mix. So it's going quite into detail, the whole programming there, which is important. Again, each sound has to be perfect. Sounds quite nicely balanced, and I can hear each instrument. So that's what I'm doing as well. I'm looking who is playing, and then can I hear this instrument's playing, and that's kind of my technique as well, to hear whether it's a balanced mix. Then I'm doing that with each section, so the brass section as well. I would go, by the way, through the whole piece, not just one section. I'm just showing you one section as an example. And as you could hear there, the bass trombone is cutting through with that note, but it's supposed to, because it's playing sforzando. Sforzando is when it's a sharp attack and then kind of easing out into a normal longs. And it sounds quite good. It's got percussion on there as well, so the hit and the sforzando give like really that uplift to go into the next chord. Doing exactly this, well, more or less the same with the percussion here. I guess I've taken this percussion sound a little bit more into hybrid, because adding a lot more other reverbs to it. Also, again, taking the very low ends out, as to not give like a hard impact on my compressor on the mix bus. And then I'm using this distressor here as parallel compression. Just watched the tutorial recently, and this mixing engineer was using this and it sounded really cool. And so without. If you look here, it actually doesn't add that much volume. It just compresses it and makes it thicker. And basically parallel compression is there's two signals running, so the dry uncompressed signal and the compressed signal. And with this plugin, you can choose here how much you want of each signal to go through. So actually I'm not applying that much compression there, but I'm just exploring with this kind of plugin. But that's what I'm doing to the drums. Then the strings, exactly the same, just balancing each of these elements with each other. This one is quite quiet, but I think it's, no, it hasn't got automation, but it's got an increasing expression there. It's only doubling my viola legato here, so it's only supposed to increase a little bit the tone and the raspiness of the viola. Similar thing, actually, I just saw that the first violin might be a little low in the mix, so I'm just going to turn it up just a tiny bit. I think I can shine through a little bit better. Then I'm doing the same thing up here. So here I divided my Stratus library. So this one is all my warped stuff. Again, always use your ears. So here I can hear my three different parts quite well. So I'm happy with that. And then I would go here to the piano section. And most of the time I have only one playing. So I just have to worry how this sounds in context with the orchestra. So I would have had the orchestra balanced, which the balancing part I'll show you in a second. And then I put the piano just to the right level so I can hear it, but it's not the solo instrument. And then the same thing approach actually with the synth section here. I have very little synths. But again, these two, I can hear them both in a good level. And sometimes higher sounds, it's the same effect with the piccolo, you can pick them up much better, so then they can actually, volume-wise, sit a bit lower, so because they're perceived much louder. So then up here I wanted to show you the mondo bass. Again, just a little trick I've learned. Max bass is doubling the frequencies of the bass, so if you listen to it on the laptop speakers, or even in a mix like this, it just, the bass parts becomes much clearer. Very, very subby. And then with this, it just cuts through just a tiny bit better. Again, it's a very little detail, but loads of little details make up the whole picture. So, and what would I do next? I would then send all these sections I was just telling you onto one bus. So I have here my warped sounds going to bus number 15. Again, I would also apply reverb individually to the tracks. I just quite like doing that, so because I believe in that each element can be sent different amounts, and I don't want to send, for example, especially here, I don't want to send as much reverb on the bass, or nothing at all, to be honest, on sub basses, as I would on like an airy sound here. Yet I still want to group them together as synthesizers, if you know what I mean. So I have actually applied a third reverb, which is my VSS3, which is a TC Electronics clone, the famous one, using the large warm hole, which is used on film and TV, which is kind of an industry standard, and it does sound really nice on strings especially, but here and there I like putting other things through it as well. So I'm applying it as like a third option to enhance the sounds for certain sounds only. So I group them, bus 15, and then I have that's coming up here, my warps. Again, I'm sending a bit of extra splosh to my large warm hole there. And again, just to make sure nothing under 20 hertz goes through there, especially if I have subby stuff there. And then I'm just going to go through, group everything. Let's take the woodwinds, bus number 13. Back here, woodwinds 13, a bit of extra splosh here overall. VSS3 again as kind of my mastering whole reverb as well. Here I have quite low with the contra bassoon, low signals, so I don't want anything going below the 20 hertz. And then once I have that, I listen to my whole piece and I check here. A good level, and I'm approaching the highest peak as well of my piece, and we're on -4. It's probably going to go up a little bit. -2.6, -3, that's kind of a good level for a mix before any plugins. Maybe it could be a tiny bit lower, actually. Maybe it could be around -5 or -6. However, I'm quite happy. And then what I would do on my mix bus or master bus, so I saved this down before because I had a little play already. Joker master. So this is also, I've been just learning loads more about mixing, because I always feel that gets a little bit left behind, because in many projects you can't afford like an external mixing engineer, and it's just good to have your mixing skills and chops up to scratch. So apparently this is a fantastic plugin, UAD. And I'm just adding a little bit of top end there for that breathiness that you put on the mix bus. So here from like 2.5K, 3K, I'm starting to add a little bit, 4K and 6K, just making this curve like we have it here. So that will add, they call it the radio frequency, and that makes it just sounds a little bit more shiny. My next plugin here on the mix bus would be this one, SSL. Again, just started using this. Here I start going from presets because I like doing that. Usually they're presets for a reason. So here I'm using Punchy Mix with Glue, and then see how it reacts. I usually don't like to go above like 3 or 4. I mean, actually only like a couple of dB on the mix compression, and then so you can wiggle your threshold when the compressor will start kicking in. You can put a bit of makeup gain as well, not that much. So the attack is fairly fast. Actually, the ratio is normal. It depends. If you have an electronic track that needs to be louder, probably you have it here, the ratio to 10, and have it much more squeezed and have the threshold lower. I'm liking it so far, how it sounds, that plugin. And then this one is a tape plugin, Ampex. I'm using 15 IPS, this setting here, that again I just stole from this mixing tutorial I was watching, but it's good to try out different things. I usually use the Studer tape, or Kramer tape I believe it's called. Well, I say usually, not always I use the tape, but it's fun to experiment and see how it goes. The Ozone 5 Imager, pretty much always on there, last in the chain for me. I'm using this preset widespread. Careful, don't use it if you have vocals. For some reason, it doesn't sound good on vocals, or it doesn't always sound good. I think with large string kind of sounds, it works much better. And that would be my mix. And then just, industry standard as well, or because we're mastering our demos in-house, I'm using the L2 as my favorite plugin. I usually put high-res CD master, and then just push it as much as I can. Like when I go to the peak, I like for it not to take off more than 2. Actually, I'd prefer if it doesn't, if it hits the loudness or perceived loudness without shaving off any volume, because I'm more in favor of dynamic rather than loudness. And it's true, the loudness is achieved in your mix. So if you have someone professional mixing your piece, you will see that it's not necessary to really throw on a massive limiter in the end to raise the level of your music. So I hope you're still with me. So that's the process from beginning to end, writing a demo. And yeah, I was really truly inspired by the movie Joker. I hope you can watch it, or if you watched it, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Let me know what you think about the composition. Let me know if you have any tips mixing wise, any other plugins that you use, any compositional tips, orchestration tips. We're all here to learn and to share, hopefully. And yeah, have fun with the music. I hope you're keeping well. And take care. See you in the next one. Bye bye.